So much for that introduction. The British government took it upon itself in January to not simply stand by while Israel bombarded Gaza, but to actually help to enforce a starvation blockade upon the Palestinians. They never just attempted to aid the Israeli government and to back the Israeli government publicly. For 12 years, the British government have participated in the arming of the Israeli government for this purpose. For 12 years, the Labour government has participated in an EU agreement for trade with the Israeli government, a government that trades on the basis of dispossessing the Palestinians of their land. In January of this year, it became clear that Gordon Brown intended to not simply send warships to Gaza in order to break the blockade as he should have, but actually to enforce the blockade. British warships to enforce an Israeli blockade that starved and humiliated the Palestinians. For that reason, Viva Palestina was born. Viva Palestina was the product of a mass upsurge of anger across the northwest of England. In places like Rochdale, in places like Blackburn, in places like Bolton, in places like Manchester, thousands took to the streets in anger at what was taking place and in solidarity with the people of Gaza. That movement needed to find an expression in terms of breaking that blockade. Viva Palestina was that expression. What we attempted to do was to organise an aid convoy that would travel over 7,000 miles, that would go through every country in North Africa, that would go through borders that had not been opened for 15 years, notably the Algerian-Tunisian border and the Algerian-Moroccan border, and actually bring practical aid to the Palestinians. Why did we do this? We did this because we believe that the Palestinians required to see not simply practical aid, medical supplies brought into the country, not simply clothing or whatever, or financial donations brought into the country, but they required to see hope. They required to see that they were not alone in the world, that the major powers, the Americans, the British, the Israelis, the Egyptian government, could not strangle the Palestinians. That was the reason for Viva Palestina. And that is the reason why I'm exceptionally proud to have been involved in a small way in Viva Palestina taking place. What we had to do was enormous. We had 3 weeks in which to try to put together not just humanitarian aid and collect all that aid and collect money, but also to put together trucks, to organise visas across North Africa. In fact, what we managed to do was to organise a visa waiver through George Galloway, but also to organise for each of these trucks to be ready and prepared and self-financed. Nobody was paid to undertake this journey. Every single person was a volunteer. Every single person required a registration, required a visa, and required support from a logistical team. Every single person undertook their own fundraising, and United for Justice in Rochdale was a fundamental part of that fundraising effort, and I salute their efforts. It was quite magnificent. The fact is that in 3 weeks we brought together over 100 vehicles. From the northwest alone, we had 46 registered drivers who undertook the journey. This included 4 ambulances, this included a fire engine from Preston that became the iconic vehicle of the journey. What we needed to do was to go through Europe and North Africa and raise awareness. The public support that this engendered amongst the Arab peoples of the Maghreb was quite astonishing. The support was magnificent. The support built up a pressure, and this was the idea. The idea was that we would build a political pressure that would enable us to punch through at Gaza, to get through the Rafah crossing and into Gaza, to defy the Egyptian government, to defy the American government, and to defy the Israeli jets that were still bombing Gaza at the time that we went through. This was the idea. It came so close to failing. One of the things that brought it through was that waiting for us in Libya were over 100 vehicles, over 100 trucks that joined us. And so by the time we went through at the Rafah crossing, there were over 250 vehicles as part of the convoy. This was a quite astonishing breakthrough. The Egyptian government were left hating the convoy but unable to stop it. They attacked it physically. They tried to undermine the convoy at every turn, but they failed. And it is a recognition of the sheer heroism of every one of our convoy drivers and every person involved in the fundraising effort of Viva Palestina that we managed to breach that blockade and send a message across the world that Gaza is not alone, that solidarity means something more than words, it means actions. And this was the quite amazing thing that took place on the 9th of March when we got through the Rafah crossing. We were met with thousands of Palestinians, extremely happy, overwhelmed, jubilant, because we had punched through this blockade. Now, as a result of what we